Hello and welcome to one of my first big topics for the channel. It is a recent event, current news thing that's kind of taking up a lot of chatter across news and the internet, especially over Trump's recent plan about acquiring or taking control of certain territories. Um, Now, I'm just going to kind of jump right into it here with a clip of him talking about that. So let's start it up.
Go ahead, please.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us what is the
Yeah,
strategy? And then
I
if
can't
that's-
assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military.
military-
All right. So let's go over this a little bit. This was at a press conference he did 2 days ago. The whole thing is about just a little over an hour, and I will almost certainly be covering other things from it, but these tie together, and so it's big enough topic to just do one video on it. But let's start with the Panama Canal. This one's a little more complex of an issue, but basically, the Panama Canal, if you didn't know, it connects the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean, and it's one of the most important maritime trade routes. It was U.S. operated from construction, which yes, we built it up until Jimmy Carter, or we built it and paid to have it help be built. Um, and it was ours until Jimmy Carter signed a treaty in 1977, which would give control of the canal back over to Panama at the end of the century. And then the end of the century in 1999, at the end of 1999, Panama took control over the canal. Now, the U.S. is responsible for about three-fourths of the trade that goes through the canal. So we are obviously their number one customer and the highest people paying for fees going through the canal. Now, obviously, even so, this saves a bunch of money still, even though we're paying the fees for it now. Because what the Panama Canal does is it knocks about 8,000 miles off the journey that it would be to go all the way around South America. Now, to Trump's credit on the issue, which he claims at least that he wants the canal because it is a security threat and it's a threat that China could take over the canal or that China has influence over the canal. Now, there is a group, um, a Hong Kong firm that is owned by Hong Kong billionaires that does manage two of the ports at the Panama Canal. Now, there's not currently any signs of the Chinese government or military control slash influence over the area or over the canal, but it could pose a future issue if China decided to take action toward Taiwan, for example, seeing as Panama was one of the countries that did recognize Taiwan as its own individual nation state up until 2017, and then it broke off relations with Taiwan and started diplomatic relations with China itself. Now, on the other hand, Trump also personally has a conflict in the past with Panama. If you remember during his last presidency, some of it came up. In 2011, Trump opened up the Trump Ocean Club International Hotel and Tower. It was his first international hotel, so obviously, a big deal to him. And it was one of the tallest buildings in all of South America. So a big spectacle on top of that, which, as you know, fan of him or not a fan of him, Trump loves a spectacle. All right, and so then later on, if you remember, this kind of came up during Trump's first presidency. Um, After supposed years of mismanagement of that hotel in Panama, and he currently still has an ongoing tax evasion case for it. And there was a Reuters investigation alleging that it was being used by organized crime for money laundering. Um, and Trump's management team was supposedly complicit in the the stuff going on. So then, by 2018, after a majority stake of the building was bought by a rich businessman, I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, but it's Orestes Fintiklis. We'll go with that. He bought it out, and a Panama court had a ruling that he could indeed oust the Trump management team and take over the company, and he could change the name of the hotel, which he did. So now the question is Trump, knowing Trump, and again, if you're a fan of him, he has admitted himself that he is a bit of a petty guy. If somebody doesn't like him, he doesn't like them. He said that himself. He said it's kind of a childish trait about me, but if somebody doesn't like me, then I probably don't like them. Right? So it's like Panama courts ruled against him, and he lost his first international hotel. It got bought out or by a takeover. Happened during his first presidency, and to his fairness, though, it did kind of the end scenario of it happened after Panama switched and decided to support China, right? So he might think, well, maybe it is tied together, or maybe it is, a coincidence, or maybe it is him just being petty about it. There's a lot more that could go on with the Panama Canal, but that's the gist of it, at least there. He says that he wants it for security because of China and economic reasons. Obviously, economic reasons, it would be beneficial for us to have it, but Panama doesn't want us to have it. It would not come easy. They are against it. One of the reasons that the treaty got signed in the first place is because there were riots. And when the deal first came about that America would control the Panama Canal, a lot of people from Panama at the time were against it. It's just the person who was Panama's representative kind of made the deal despite not even living in Panama himself. And then we'll move on to Greenland, which is the other part of this. All right, so Greenland is a territory of Denmark, but it has its own government within Greenland. There's actually only about 50,000 people there, and also to make note of, it is much smaller than it shows up on a map. It's stretched on the map. It's actually quite a bit smaller. But in Greenland, there already is a large military base. Again, Trump wants to say that Greenland's for security. Now, Denmark is an ally of ours and a founding member of NATO. Um, it was one of the first countries, I should say, not just one of the countries, one of the first countries to offer aid to the U.S. and support after September 11th. Now, Greenland is rich with resources. The full accessibility of said resources aren't fully known, but it is very resource heavy, and we're talking rare earth metals like gold, we're talking uranium, offshore oil, but Trump didn't really mention anything in regards to, oh, maybe we want the resources that are there. He says it's for security reasons. All right, then we'll move on from that to Canada. Now, Trump's made these posts about Canada becoming part of the United States, Canada being the 51st state. Honestly, he's just completely trolling. There's probably no reason to take any of it seriously when it comes to that. It's very well known that Trump and Trudeau had a really poor relationship, and it's probably his way of signaling, well, Trudeau's gone. Maybe you can get a leader who wants to work with me. Otherwise, you might as well just be our next state type thing. Childish? Yes, certainly. Is it annoying leaders in Canada and doing probably nothing at all to improve our relations with our biggest trade partner, Canada, and longtime ally, Canada? Yeah, probably is annoying them and probably isn't doing any good at all. But a lot of people seem to forget that along with Denmark, like I mentioned earlier, Canada with them was also one of the first, and they were some of the largest contributors to aid the U.S. after 9/11, the terrorist attacks. They followed us even further into the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they didn't just support us financially and with their intelligence agencies, but they also contributed troops to help us fight the battle, despite that the attack was just on U.S. soil. Now, Trump has an idea, basically, that you can threaten, even if it's like a bluff, that he can threaten some of our strongest and closest allies. That is absolutely bonkers crazy. It's terrible. It's a terrible look for the US. It's a terrible look for foreign policy. And him even mentioning it is going to cause a loss of respect for the United States. Like, even though it is probably just a tactic to try and get something that he wants. All right. So I'm going to use an example here. All right. You personally, are you more likely to work with a nice guy or a jerk? You're probably more likely to work with the nice guy. Even more so, you're more likely going to give better deals or pay more or utilize somebody more often if they provide good service, good friendly service. Like if it's a business that you shop at or a contractor that you hire, you're obviously going to choose people that are easy to work with. Even if a lot of times, if you're paying a little bit more, it's worth it for the quality of partnership or the quality of doing business with them. But he's using it for a scare tactic to get what he wants. That kind of is who Trump is, and some people like that about him. But there's places when you want to be a strong man and when you don't. So even those in MAGA who hear this, and pretty much across the board, most of MAGA is like, well, he has no intention of doing this. It's just a bargaining chip. It's just him trying to get them to play ball. Okay. Well, instead of just the do business tactic, imagine this. You're holding a gun to somebody, or in this case, missiles or many guns to someone, and you're saying, give me all your money or your territory. But instead of that, you're saying, well, okay, I don't need all your money or all your territory. How about you give me 20%? Well, it might not be as bad as saying, give me everything, but it's still pretty terrible. Like, that's still an awful thing to do. Now, even worse, imagine that someone that you're trying to rob or threaten is someone that's been your friend for years, been your ally for years. It is literally crazy cat lady levels of insane. We're talking like 30 cats, old woman living by herself levels of insane. Bringing up the fact that military force is a possibility against our NATO allies, our trade partners, people who were there for us during a terrorist attack, that is so damaging and crazy when it comes to our relationship with allies and how they view the US. Trump already, as you know, doesn't have the greatest track record for how he's viewed uh, in Europe or by some of our allies. So at best, him stating this is stupid. And honestly, it's catastrophic at worst. Now, imagine that Iran, one of the US's current enemies or foes, who was supposedly involved in one of the threats on Trump, and who we know as terrorist organizations that don't like the US, imagine if they did an attack on us. Do you think our allies would jump right up again and say, yeah, we got your back. You've been good to us. We're going to be good to you. It was terrible what happened? Or do you think they're going to say, good luck with that? When you try and bargain with fear or destruction, I'm leaning toward they're going to tell us to get bent. Sorry about the barking dog, by the way. All right, it's dinner time for the pup. Got a 6-month-old yellow lab puppy. He was hungry. All right, anyways, moving on. So I've already got the next thing up. So this is kind of the last of it here. I'll just go ahead and play this.
Changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate. And Mexico has to stop allowing millions of...
So here you have it. Wow. All right. This. Wow, Gulf of America. Doesn't that just sound beautiful? It's like the most beautiful word. Just rolls right off the tongue. Gulf of America. We're mad at Mexico because the border issues, that they're not paying for my wall. So what are we going to do if they won't pay for the wall? We're going to rename it Gulf of America. It's literally a joke. It is not worth talking about more than that. Like, this is dumb. But he's trying to piss off Mexico, obviously. Their president of Mexico has already responded and made some jokes back. Because, yeah, it is just ridiculous. But anyways, that is it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I was able to keep the time not too long, I think. And hopefully my terrible Trump impressions weren't too bad. But there was more stuff from that press conference that I will probably go over in a future video. Still got a couple more that I'm kind of all set up to record and some ideas for future ones. Feel free to follow me on any of the socials or anything like that. Thanks. See you next time.